Welcome into the inaugural episode of Under Further Review. My name is Ayden Aby. I am joined by my beautiful co-host, BD Squared, Brandon Dyer. Keep listening, you might find out what the other BD stands for. And today we're going to be talking about the Texas Democratic, or about both Texas primaries. We're talking about the Senate outlook, a couple of House races, and what is going on in Iran, the outlook of the world. Brandon, how do you feel about the things happening in the world right now? What is your opinions on the outlook of how America is heading? That's a deep question.
Man,
Move on from that and into the Texas Democratic primary, where we saw Jane. Or wait, actually, I want to talk a little bit first about something that just came across my desk right before we went live here. Kristi Noem has been promoted with a special envoy to the Shield of the Americas, removed as head of the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma is tapped to be the new head of the Department of Homeland Security. Fun fact about Mark Wayne Mullen that I found out in my research for this episode: his name is Mark Wayne because he was named after both of his dad's brothers, and they planned on changing his name to just Mark or just Wayne, but his mother wrote down Mark Wayne on the birth certificate and just kept it. What a stupid thing to do. What a stupid man to lead the Department
that's
of
an interesting tidbit right there.
What a great choice to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Me and Brandon
Mr.
Dyer,
Mark Wayne.
Mr. Mark Wayne, me and Brandon Dyer are some of the leading conservative voices in the state of Georgia. Big supporters of what's going on at the DHS, everything that they've done in the past. And we hope that Mark Wayne continues to get it right over there. Some of the beautiful stuff that they've had done. Get into the Texas Democratic Senate primary. We saw James Tallarico defeat Jasmine Crockett 52-46, a 6-point victory for the 36-year-old Presbyterian minister. Brandon, you got some further statistics to drop on me for this one?
So we had Jasmine Crockett, the Texas House representative for District 30 over there in Texas. Since 2022 includes that Dallas area that's really populated, really big city that's going to get a whole lot of votes for whoever is into that district. She ran with no Democratic opposition at all in 2024. And you look at the other side of this, Tallarico, an eighth-generation Texan and a sitting member of the Texas House of Representatives since 2023 in District 50 over there. I don't know how they got that many districts, but everything is bigger in Texas. So I guess I don't know the district number over there, but
about 260 counties on Texas. So they got a few districts, believe it or not.
He's a former middle school teacher, and one of his big things that he ran on was fighting billionaire mega donors and emphasized finding common ground with disaffected Republicans and trying to reclaim religious values from the evangelical right and bring them into the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Crockett won of that, as I said, metropolitan area around Dallas, because Dallas and Houston, because that's where her seat is at. But Tallarico focused more on the El Paso, San Antonio, and most important to me, I think, was Austin, where he wound up getting 75% of the vote in bringing back a lot of the lost art of the Democratic Party, which was relying on trying to bring Christianity back into the party, something that I think could be very successful when you get into these southern states and the Democrats.
Yeah, his performance in Austin was insane. He put up, minor dictator numbers in Austin. Looked like he was running a a minor dictatorship out of there. And really, the numbers in Houston were not that bad. He only lost Houston by 5. Dallas was where Crockett was going to run for him. She needed about a 70 to 80% share of the votes there to have a chance, and she only put up 59-40. I mean, Tallarico really overperformed just about every single poll that had been released in this race. I don't think anybody had him winning Austin by 52 points. That's an insane number that you do not at all anywhere. And just the numbers he put up across Latino voters, all across the state were absolutely insane. 22 points in areas with more Hispanic voters, won by 32 in areas that Bernie Sanders won in the 2020 Democratic primary. And I think that this really showed an idea that we'll be getting into a lot in this episode, that there's a split in the Democratic Party between the Biden classic voters who are, about identity politics and are about just fighting Donald Trump, and progressives who have real ideas to try to change things in the country and are less focused on just battling against whatever the establishment is these days. There's a clear ideological focus that they have and are trying to enact on the rest of the country. Crockett
And
really,
yeah, I think that's been a lost art within the like Democratic Party, especially since Donald Trump wound up taking over. It's been a more anti just whatever Donald Trump is going on instead of coming up with their own policies. Really, just being I'm just anti that instead of creating your own policies that get to a point to where it's like, well, once you get to where you're gonna be, what's gonna happen? What kind of policies are you gonna enact? Like, it's cool to say these things out loud, but there's got to be policies set forth that way these things can happen.
yeah, well, I mean, you see Crockett. Crockett has pretty much entirely focused her political identity on fighting against Donald Trump. You saw her in the Bondi hearings. She went very viral, just really just insulting and Bondi to her face. That's really been a lot of her politics, is just insulting a Republican to their face and not offering any further follow up on any policy position. I don't. When you think Jasmine Crockett, you think the lady who's yelling at Marjorie Taylor Greene, and who's yelling at whoever the Republican nominee of the day is in the Senate or in the House of Representatives. I mean, unless a legislator who has this bold new idea for what America could be. And I think that really hit her here in the Democratic primary. But I think you're seeing a lot of Gen Z voters. This is something that you've seen with the Mamdani race. You just saw it in New Jersey's 11th district with Analia Mejia getting a win, where Democratic primary voters, especially young ones, want to be treated as if they are intelligent and have a view for the future, and less so just being anti the establishment and less platitudes, because that has been a lot of what the Democratic Party has been for years and years and years, is just we hate what's happening in the country today, and we don't really have a different idea. Our ideas are decently similar. We're not offering any new view, any new ideas for what we can do. We just don't like what's happening right now. And that's been the Democrat viewpoint for 25, 30, maybe even 40 years, you could argue. We saw Tallarico really fight with his own idea. He had his campaign website said it's time to flip the tables, which is a callback to a scripture, where Jesus goes into the temple and sees people selling merchandise, and flips the tables on them, starts yelling at them and tells them to change their ways. And I do think that is a good mission statement, Tallarico, to the things that are happening right now in America are not acceptable for anyone that does claim to be of the Christian faith. And he's going to fight against, evangelicals, the scum of America, I would call them, Ken Paxton and John Cornyn. They're going to make this argument for the Republican Party fighting for the Christian vision of America, where poor people get taken advantage of and have no rights, and they're going to be the bottom class, and the rich are going to take advantage of them, and that's good, and that's the Christian way. The strong survive. Tallarico is more of a fighting. I'm not saying Tallarico's a perfect guy. I have my issues with Tallarico myself, but I think that he is a move in the right direction, from definitely from what Republicans have been doing in Texas, what a Ken Paxton's been doing. We'll get into Paxton a little bit right after this. That man is a
Yeah.
scum of the earth, an absolute scourge, one of the worst people in politics today, and that is saying a whole lot. But Tallarico,
I think we may got two people that's beat him. I think we've got two people that might beat him that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the
Yeah,
all-time Chud Off. But yeah, Paxton and Cornyn right there that are going to go into a runoff with each other. Those two really aren't the faces of what you'd say moral politicians.
I mean, I really don't have an issue with Cornyn. I would say morally. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and get into the Republican race for Senate here, where Cornyn went ahead and defeated Ken Paxton by 1.2%. They're going to go into a runoff with neither of them getting 50%. Congressman Wesley Hunt, playing spoiler, getting 13% of the vote in that one. And Cornyn is really just your classic Republican. I mean, there is just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You really can't say anything about Cornyn that is he served as a Texas Supreme Court judge, served as an attorney general to the state of Texas under George Bush, and has just done 4 terms of whatever the Republicans are doing. I'm cool with, and I'm not going further right than them. He just finished runner up in the Senate Majority Leader vote to John Toon, the current Majority Leader. I mean, he's just kind of a boring guy who just, is gonna do whatever he believes in, but he's not really a real person. He's kind of an alien, where he is the Republican. Him and Paxton actually have a lot of parallels that I was looking into, where they both grew up military families. Neither of them both grew up Republican families. Neither of them from Texas, but both running for Senate in Texas. Neither of them were born there, and they've just grown up like wealthy Republican military families that are kind of chud is the word we use these days. I think people would describe them as I would say Cornyn is much more of a moral leader than Ken Paxton can ever claim to be. Ken Paxton impeached for bribery, just cheated on his wife very publicly, but still claims to be
Yeah.
this Christian moral leader that's going to do what's right for the country. And I don't know where that argument exactly comes from. Yeah,
But yeah, it was Cornyn outspent Paxton in this one by $70 million, and he had the Trump backing in that one. So from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, okay, there's no way this guy can lose. And then you also look at in 2023, Paxton was impeached by the Texas legislature for fraud and obstruction of justices. But he was acquitted in a state Senate trial in that one, though. And again,
yeah,
like you touched on earlier, he's recently filed for divorce amid allegations
yeah,
for having multiple affairs.
the Senate, he was acquitted by one vote. He was acquitted by one vote, and that one vote was his wife, who voted for him. And now they're divorced because he was cheating on her. So maybe she wishes she had some more information heading into that impeachment hearing. Paxton, a one-eyed man, by the way. I don't, this is a. I don't know if you looked into this. He lost ability to see in a game of hide and seek. He has one green eye that he could see out of, and one brown eye that he cannot see out of. And that shows a lot of what Kim Paxton
He was playing.
Own body is disintegrating on him. Won't even stand up for the things that he stands up for. What were you saying?
He was playing a literal hide and seek right there. He's hiding one of his eyes and seeking with the other one.
There's been a lot of pictures of him that I've seen with the American Girl dolls where they have one eye like kind of permanently closed. That's been the Ken Paxton doll. Just really an insane person to be a national candidate. He spoke at the January 6th rally. He got the troops ready to go for that one. He pursued legal action against the Biden administration 106 times in his time as Texas Attorney General. This has been a guy that has been leading like the Trump MAGA movement. And to see Trump still go for Cornyn in the election really shows that there is no real ideological movement in MAGA. It is what the money says to do, I think, because there is no one truly committed to what the MAGA movement is about hating immigrants, about putting other countries' interests before your own, and about like just doing whatever you can culturally to be like, yeah, Republicans are the best. Christianity and freaking white people are awesome, and there's nothing else that really contends with them. That is what Ken Paxton is, and he still can't get the Trump endorsement over Cornyn, who has not been MAGA. He's argued with Donald Trump actively, and at the end of the day, Donald Trump is not an ideological movement. Donald Trump is bending the knee to whatever the money says to do. And that is what he will do till the day he dies.
Right.
Yeah. And that is what we have seen in this Texas Senate race, where I think Paxton still has a good shot of winning this runoff. I think Wesley Hunt largely was a protest vote against Cornyn. Even if people aren't committed to Paxton, I think they will still go for him because the motivating factor in the Texas Republican Party since 2000, since Ann Richards lost the governorship to George W. Bush, George, or just George W. Not George, has been hatred. Like that, that is the motivating factor. I feel like in Texas, they live in Houston, in Dallas, in San Antonio. They live around minorities. They live around Hispanic people. They live around Black people, and they hate them with a passion. They're so mad that they have to share the space with them. It pisses them off to an insane level where they will love a Ken Paxton. They will like give him all the support in the world, no matter what he does. Like no matter what moral disintegration he partakes in, they will support Ken Paxton till the end of the line because he represents them, their hatred, their anger that they feel. I think that's just the majority of the Texas Republican Party. You can, if you got a rebuttal for me, go ahead. But
Oh, dude, no. See, I did think one of the funniest things in this was Paxton. He was asked to characterize Cornyn, and what he said when he was being old and out of touch with Texans. And I feel like that's just a 64-year-old man calling a 73-year-old man out of touch and just old. I guess right now is old guys just old guys calling each other old and out of touch is something I'm tired of seeing in politics.
well,
Just other old guys just calling other old guys old and be like, oh no, you're out of touch with what's going on. And be like, well, buddy, you're not far behind them. You're only, 9 years younger than them? And you're still 64. And both of these guys, when I was looking at some of the things that they supported, was term limits. And that baffles me because my biggest thing with term limits is term limits need to exist. That way we don't have old guys being like out of touch in the House or in Congress or whatever. But these are still just two old guys that are going to wind up being in there.
now I'm a term limits hater. I actually think that they suck, personally. But I think Paxton is in touch a lot more with the young base of the Republican Party, the Groypers, our guy, one of our favorite political commentators, Nick Fuentes, a guy that we listen to a lot for a lot of guidance on what we believe politically. Ken Paxton has a lot more to say, has a lot more to do with what Nick Fuentes says, where he is. I mean, I would say that he's anti. Ken Paxton's probably the most pro-Israel person to ever exist. That's not something that you can argue. These guys are both going to be super pro-Israel, super pro cutting taxes, super anti-immigration. I don't know why they're arguing so much. Like Ken Paxton's probably a worse person, if I had to say, but really, what's the difference? They're going to vote the same on 99% of the things. Neither of them have any morals whatsoever. They're both paid off by whoever. They both hate everybody equally. Who cares? But what this really matters about is I think Paxton is a much worse candidate for an independent voter who is looking for who to vote for. And I think that can open up a lane for Tallarico to have a chance at winning Texas if Paxton ends up being the nominee. And Paxton has really overperformed in runoffs in the past. He's gone from 10 and 11-point victories in the first round of voting to 27 and 34-point victories in his runoff elections. But if Paxton can once again overperform, now he's probably not going to get the Trump endorsement. Cornyn's probably going to get the Trump endorsement, especially after he has won the primary against all odds, where he was not expected to whatsoever.
Yeah.
And Cornyn is going to get the money. he's gotten much more political donations than Paxton has. He's completely soloed on the money side. I mean, he's just dominated on raising money because, like I said, Paxton is the young man's candidate at 63. This is the guy for the glory push. The Nazis of the Republican Party, you know, the Hitler Third, I believe they call it, of Americans. That's Paxton. While Cornyn's going to have to battle through, get the independent votes, get the wealthy, which is that dude loves the wealthy. Nobody loves the wealthy more than John Cornyn. I don't think anybody has a better claim to I'm participating in the interests of the wealthy and no one else better than John Cornyn.
I think whoever winds up winning this one is definitely going to have just Trump's picked by Trump to be like, hey, you're the one that I want to win this. And there's probably going to be a lot of money thrown at it, probably more money than I think we'll see in a whole lot of elections, simply because it's going to be absolutely terrible if that seat winds up turning blue if you're a Republican. Because I never thought that I'd see the day that a senator would be a Democrat within the state of Texas. But that seems like that's the way that it's headed right now.
I think that's a lot of the reason why the money is going to coalesce behind Cornyn as the just the less controversial, hasn't had public scandals, cheating on his wife and taking bribes from political friends of his. He has a lot less of the moral standing where I think that Tallarico could attack a Paxton in a general election on you're not a like on the evangelical side, because that is what Texas is. Texas is the Bible Belt. We love God more than we love, anything else. And they have this evangelical mindset of the most important things that God does is love white people and love low taxes. A weird idea of Jesus out there in the beautiful state of Texas that we agree with, to be quite frank with you, as the major conservatives that me and Brandon are. I'm voting for Ken Paxton. I don't know, but I'm going to be a Ken Paxton guy till the day that I die. To be entirely honest with you, but if Tallarico does end up pulling this one, I think that could be a major thing in the Texas Senate races that we could end up, or in the major outlook for the Senate that we could see, where that could bring them to 50 states straight up if they were to win this one. Just on like with winning Georgia and North Carolina, as I believe that they will, Ossoff and Roy Cooper are much stronger candidates than their Republican counterparts. That leaves 4 toss-up elections if Tallarico were to beat Cornyn, which I think is a long shot. That would leave 4 toss-up elections where the Democrats would need to win in Nebraska, Montana, Ohio, and Alaska. Brandon, which one of those do you think would be the most winnable for the Democratic Party in this? Tallarico would be next.
I think that you're probably gonna look at Maine. You're gonna have Mr. Graham Plattner over there going up against Susan Collins. Mm-hmm. I think that Graham Plattner is a man of the people over there in Maine, and he's proven that a few times. He's a little controversial. Listen, he can get a little bit controversial.
People.
Yeah. But I think that having my biggest problem.
People love the Nazis.
Hey. I think that serves as one of the better running ones for
the Democratic Party for sure. I think Graham Plattner has a much better chance of taking on Susan Collins,
the Democrats, and again, I think she likes to vote on Republican on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, on everything. I mean, I don't think there's been a stance that Susan Collins has taken really against the Republican Party. She'll say, "Hey guys, I'm really considering taking this one. What ICE has done has really deeply troubled me. Let's give them $10 billion more dollars. What's the big deal with what ICE has done? They're protecting our southern border is a big thing to do in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We got to give them all the money that they asked for." And I think that on the generic ballot where this is, I think this is about a +6 race for Republicans. And I think that Graham Plattner is just a fun guy who really captures what Maine is about. Even with the Nazi
Yeah,
tattoo, even with the weird Reddit
like
stuff, battles through the scandals. You can go ahead and tell me your thoughts on him.
yeah. See, so my biggest thing with Plattner that he's not afraid to tell you what it's like, what he feels like. Like he's openly said, called himself a communist. He's wrote that all cops are bastards on a Reddit post, and he's agreed with a post calling rural white Americans just a racist and stupid outright. And I think that
Ah, man, I love it.
I at least like at face value, you know what you're getting out of him, and
I
he's
love
gonna be real
everything
with
you
you.
just said
There's an
too.
authentic feel to it that I feel like is lost in politics now, and I would rather my politicians around me be more open, be more honest with things like that, and about how they really do feel, instead of telling me they're one way and then vote another way.
Yeah, completely agree with you. The things that Susan Collins has done, where she will tell you, guys, I really don't like Donald Trump. You know, this guy is really ruining the country, but we've got to vote with him. I mean,
I've
he's
got to side
right
with
in
them.
everything. It's just a worldview that is you just sit there and you're a hypocrite every single day. And I don't know how you look yourself in the mirror as a moderate Republican. I think, oh, dude, nothing pisses me off more than a moderate Republican, except for a moderate Democrat. John Fetterman should get just for existing. Oh my God, that pisses me off too. But the things that
But
Susan
now for
Collins,
you, kind of like asking you for
saying,
you asking you kind of like the same question. Which one of these races do you think is more viable for Democrats to win in it?
well, I think Plattner's the most viable. I mean, I have him chalked up as a blue seat already. I've got Ohio, Nebraska, Montana, and Alaska as the four that like Democrats, if they flip Tallarico, these are the four that they are going to focus on to really get that 51st seat. And I think Alaska is going to be the most likely, with Mary Peltola being a likely candidate to win that seat. I just have a lot of faith in her getting win. Hold on, I'm trying to pull up my. Why is it Michigan up? What? Oh, Mary Peltola. Here we go. Over Dan Sullivan. Sorry, I cannot remember the most irrelevant Republican's name of all time. Dan Sullivan. What a useless person that is. I mean, and Peltola has won the statewide election for the Democrats. She's been the U.S. House of Representatives member, the one and only House of Representatives member, more rare than the senator from Alaska. And I think that she has a really good shot of beating Dan Sullivan. She's up in very in the one poll that has been done this year. Actually, no. Hold on. There's three polls that have been done this year. Let me correct myself. She was up 47.4 to 47.1 in the February 6th released poll, 0.3% victory. And then she's been leading by one, been leading by two in the other two polls that have been this year. I think Peltola has a decent shot at it with the things that she's done. I don't really know why she speaks to Democrats. She's a blue dog. You know, she's not really a Democrat, but she'll vote with the party, 60% of the time, and she'll screw them over when they want to do something real. That's better than nothing, I reckon. I mean, I'd rather have Joe Manchin than Ken Paxton in the Senate. Believe it or not, barely. The difference is marginal to me, really. Who cares? They're both going to do the dumbest shit imaginable every single time they can. But I'd rather have it at the end of the day. If it really comes down to it, you got a gun in my head. You're like, we'd rather have Mary Peltola or freaking Chud in there. Give me Mary Peltola. I reckon we're gonna have a blue dog. That's gonna save the country. More blue dog Democrats. That's what's really gonna fix the nation. We have more moderates in office. Yes. Ah.
I don't, and I feel like in the political climate we live in now, I get that moderates mean like something, but I feel like anytime I hear the word moderate, it's almost an immediate red flag for me, which is you're either going to be one of two things. You're either going to be shy in a way, and you're going to vote on this side on some things, or this side on some other things, and you're going to be kind of like secretive about where you stand on a whole lot of things,
Well, they're
or
also
it's
just
going to wind up being something to where you just want to say you're moderate, that way you don't lose votes whenever it comes re-election time, or whenever it comes up to where it's like, oh well, I don't want to claim either side of this because it's going to lose me votes.
well, there just seems to be a difference between a Republican moderate and a Democratic moderate, where a guy like Joe Manchin completely fucked everything that the Biden administration wanted to do for 4 years. That dude was just a roadblock for every single thing that anybody wanted to accomplish in an administration that I don't think really wanted to accomplish anything anyways. I mean, it was a very modern administration that was like, oh, we can't really do anything, but we're gonna, act like we can. And Joe Manchin was a roadblock to nothing. We'll call him. Whereas Republican moderates, I feel like are like, oh, guys, what the Republicans are doing is terrible. Donald Trump is really bad. This guy's a scourge on our community. We can't support what he's doing. But then when it comes time to vote, when it comes down to the brass tacks, if they're running for reelection, they're going to vote with the Republican Party. Now, we've seen Tom Tillis from North Carolina, who's retired. He's going to get replaced by Democrat Roy Cooper, former governor of North Carolina. He's getting replaced by him. He's gone. Today, we saw him call out Kristi Noem to her face. He was like, you killed a dog at 14 months old. What is wrong with you? That's why would you write about that in a book and be like, yeah, that was a tough leadership decision. I had to fucking kill this dog to make America great again. What? What are you talking about? And I think Tom Tillis's questioning of Kristi Noem ended up being a major reason of why she ended up getting fired. But when it comes down to it, dude, Tom Tillis ain't gonna make no stand against the Republican Party. Tom Tillis is gonna vote exactly in line with what they tell him to do. Tom Tillis, get in line, Tom. They're gonna say, yes, sir. I'll vote exactly what you tell me to, John. John, please, sir, may I have another? Whip me harder and tell me what to vote for again. Sorry to get off, on a tangent there. We're talking about Senate races. Railing hard against what Tom Tillis is going to do. All right, we're right back here. We just lost our meeting. Our Zoom recording stopped working on us. We're being censored by the right wing mainstream media who doesn't want you to hear the truth about why the Senate is going to flip to the communists this in this midterm election.
They're always doing it to us, Ayden. They're always just trying to limit conservative voices on these things, man.
That's exactly right. They don't want to hear about what Dan Osborne is going to do in this Nebraska election against Pete Ricketts, who, by the way, you look at Pete Ricketts' endorsements on Wikipedia, Donald Trump and AIPAC. What an awful group of endorsements to have heading into the 2026 election. That's going to subtract about at least 10 points of votes from you. Dan Osborne, on the other hand, has a tranche, we'll say, of endorsements from labor unions, from Robert Reich, a former United States Secretary of Labor, from some random from the Nebraska Democratic Party, from the Nebraska Democratic Party itself, from End Citizens United, party or organization that wants to end massive political donations into campaigns. I love everything that Dan Osborne stands for. Now, I'll say that without knowing that everything Dan Osborne stands for. But I'm sure that he knows everything and that he is tremendous on every issue. I like a labor leader in politics. I love a union. Number one thing about me politically,
Right.
I love a union. If you are a union, thumbs up emoji. That's the good stuff. We need more unions in American politics. That's the number one. That's if I could change one thing about America, if I'm fantasizing and salivating over things, we'll say, I would just have everything be a labor union. There's no industry, no job, Nothing that I can think of that shouldn't be unionized. Nothing that should. That's communism. Sorry. We'll get off of my communist viewpoints and we'll go ahead and look at this or this Montana. No. Sorry, not Montana yet. Montana is the last of these elections that I think has a chance to flip Democrat. Ohio is going to be the next one that I think has a chance to flip with Mr. Sherrod Brown running against John Houston, who in a poll administered by Race to the White House on February the 4th, Houston led by 2.1%. However, I don't buy it. I don't buy a single thing from John Houston being up in this election. Why? Because the people of Ohio can't like J.D. Vance. Nobody really likes J.D. Vance. Brandon, what are your thoughts on J.D. Vance? Are they positive?
I think he's an absolute just Trump puppet.
See, that's exactly right. That's a great take. Not only is he a puppet, I think he's cheating on his wife with Erica Kirk, which this is not a claim that can be legally held against me. This is a comedy podcast. We're making jokes here.
Yes.
Everything that we say is a joke, and if you hold it against us in a court of law, you're a bad person, and you will be held accountable for that in a court of law. I'll countersue you, and then it'll be crazy. Vivek Ramaswamy endorsing you in a political election.
J.D. Vance.
Oh,
J.D. Vance is taking. J.D. Vance is taking full-on advantage of that widow that moved on way too quickly there.
And that's a joke that cannot be held accountable for in the court of law. That's a complete, an utter statement that we're not able to back up. That being said, J.D. Vance not endorsing John Houston in this election just yet. You know who has? Vivek Ramaswamy, which is going to alienate half of the voters in the Ohio Republican primary because Ohio is full of Nazis. Ohio might be the single most Nazi Republican party in the country. And I don't think you know how big of a statement that is for me because I think they're all Nazis. I love the word Nazi. People say, oh, no, you can't call all Republicans Nazis. That's going to degrade the word. I say, stop being a Nazi then.
Not enough Republicans are being called Nazis.
You know what? That's entirely true. I agree with you completely. And John Houston in this election is going to have to deal with that, where he is going to have to kind of satisfy both the Nazi party of the group, which is massive, and the donor party of the group, which is also kind of Nazis, but they're not. They're Nazis who like growing business. All right, they take the socialist out of National Socialist. they put the National Capitalist. It's a new party that is massive in America. I believe they just go by the Republicans at this point. I think Sherrod Brown has a very good chance of winning this election. He's raised over $14 million already. Houston was not elected to this position. He was appointed. He's not a popular – he was elected to a position in the state of Ohio, but he was elected to the lieutenant governorship, which is not real, dude. Nobody's actually paying attention to what they're voting for in the lieutenant governor race. But when it comes to a Senate election, you have to actually have positions that you actually have to defend. And I don't know a damn thing about John Houston. And I'm the most politically tapped in person in the country. Nobody pays more attention to politics than me. And I don't know the first thing about John Houston. I couldn't tell you one thing about him. And I can tell you one thing about every single politician we have in this country. Like Sherrod Brown, he has curly hair. That's one thing about this politician. I can't tell you one single thing. Another person who's endorsed by Citizens United. Is Sherrod Brown a big Israel fan? Yes. Is John Houston a big Israel fan? Yes. Is this effectively going to be a Chud Off on how they vote in the Senate? Yeah, Sherrod Brown's a blue dog, dude. Nothing I hate more than a blue dog. If there was one thing that I could end the Democratic Party, It would be a lot of things, actually. I don't really know if there's just one thing that I can do with the Democratic Party. I would probably end everything that they do. I really hate the Democrats. As I've said many times in my life, there's only one thing that I hate more than a conservative, and that's a liberal. And that's a view that I hold dearly in this Democratic election for Ohio. But Sherrod Brown, calling balls and strikes as an umpire. I don't have really
So,
political opinions. I'm an umpire. I call balls and strikes. I think Sherrod Brown's got a good chance in this one as an impartial third party who does not care who wins the election. You got something to say, brother?
so now tell me what's a blue dog in the Democratic Party?
A blue dog is a conservative who's too much of a pussy to say it. They're scared of making any real political statement either way. They want to be immoderate. They want to say, "Oh, guys, anything that we
No,
do in this country is bad, and anything that is proposed is bad. We could do so much better."
like oh, you guys, we're we're being too extreme trying to actually create policies that'll overturn the government that we have right now and actually
Yeah,
make changes. Like you guys, we still need government. You guys.
yeah.
They
They're
said we still need
conservative.
government and we don't want to mess around with it too much. We don't want to anger the government. We don't
Yeah,
want to
they're.
make it too angry.
Mhm. They are at the end of the day conservatives more than anything else. They don't really believe in anything that will affect any of the power struggles, any of the set power structures that are set up in the government today. They want to be anti the Republicans, and any progressive measure that a Democrat makes, they're going to say, "Oh, dude, what is going on in America these days? We used to care about the small business owner." That's their number one problem is the small business owner, the blue dog. Nobody loves a small business owner more than a blue dog Democrat. That's what they're really deeply about at the end of the day. Now, moving on to probably another blue dog Democrat. He's endorsed by a blue dog. He's not a Democrat. In the Montana Senate election, it's going to be Seth Bodnar, who today was endorsed by former Democratic Senator for 3 terms, John Tester out of Montana, who was a bit of an insane thing being a 3 term senator from Montana in the era of Trump. He had won re-election in 2018 off the back of that like anti-Trump movement for the Democratic Party in 2018. But really, Montana has been moving in a Republican direction for a couple of decades now, and this race was all tied up until literally today, Thursday, March the 5th, where Steve Daines pulled out minutes before the deadline to register for the Senate election and endorsed his now protege, we'll call him, Kurt Alme, a U.S. attorney for Montana. And now Kurt Alme is solidly going to be favored in this. But I think Bodnar actually has a decent chance of winning this with the Tester endorsement, with not running as a Democrat. I think we're going to see this a lot in these states, like we've seen it in Nebraska with Dan Osborne. We're seeing it now in Montana with Bodnar. We're seeing a lot of these Midwestern kind of states where a person who would be a Democrat runs against the Democratic Party, runs as their own independent candidate to try to take over, to try to take that liberal slash progressive lane against a neocon chud in the Republican Party. And Bodnar is a really like solid candidate, a veteran, a Rhodes Scholar who went to the University of Oxford and earned degrees in economics and history and comparative social policy. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds fancy. He's been the president of Montana. Just a really interesting guy who has been endorsed by John Tester, who in his time since losing the in his time since losing the senatorial race that he had in 2024 has turned against the Democratic Party entirely, has blamed the brand of National Democrat for him losing, and convinced Bodnar to run as an independent, as someone who can kind of turn this what would be a definite Republican seat into a more progressive slash moderate. I think Bodnar. I don't think Bodnar's our savior. I don't think Bodnar's the guy who's gonna fix the country. But he's taking a step in the right direction over whatever awful person has been the district attorney of Montana.
Now, I do want to ask. So you see a whole lot of people that are, oh, well, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. Do you think they're more drawn to like the independent guys that like this that don't like claim to have a party that they align with?
Yeah, I think they're the stupidest people in the world, to be honest with you. I think they're drawn people who are like, I'm an independent. I don't really have any strong opinions either way. I think I take both parties' opinions and I ball them up. I think they're the dumbest people on the face of the planet who say, oh man, what are beliefs? I don't really have those. I just want to vote for whatever seems easiest at the time. They have so much cognitive dissonance on what is happening in the country that they say, okay, whatever is the easiest thing to vote for at the time, pretty much whatever's not in power at the time, they're voting against whoever the president is because they're just, well, I'm not really happy with what's happening with the country right now. So I'm just going to vote for whoever's against that. They're the dumbest people on the face of the planet. Now, unfortunately for Bodnar in this race, they are running the Democrat against him. So I think that will eat into a lot of his vote share unless the Democratic Party pulls out an election. But I saw a statement today from the Montana Democratic Party chair who said it's their goal to get people elected who run under the Democratic Party banner. They're not really consolidating behind the independent candidate who would be the best for their party if they were to get elected like they are, like the Nebraska Democratic Party is with Osborne. They are running a candidate against him actively. So I'm not sure I really believe in Bodnar's viability. I like the idea of it though. I don't mind. I like people running as independent because then they're not tied down to Democrat voting. Like Bernie Sanders would hate Democrats and it's okay. And I like Bernie Sanders. So at the end of the day, am I much different
Oh, I love Bernie Sanders.
yeah. At the end of the day, am I much different than these stupid, dumb people who are running for whatever? And speaking of the stupidest, dumbest people on the planet, let's go ahead and talk about this Texas 23rd district, where I think it might be the dumbest people in the world running against each other with Brandon Herrera defeating Tony Gonzalez in the initial race, but they're still going to a runoff because neither of them got 50%, beat them by 1.6% in this initial section of the race. Brandon Herrera, known as the AK guy on YouTube, has done major collab with Kyle Rittenhouse. Um, he made national headlines a couple years ago. He was named in the manifesto of the Annunciation Catholic school shooter in Minneapolis last year. If you heard about that, they said that they had met Herrera at a gun show and name checked them as a major inspiration behind their shooting. Member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans organization, continuously calls the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression, and
No.
it's his second run for the House of Representatives. He lost by just 354 votes his last time out. And this time around, he's been bailed out because Mr. Tony Gonzalez, who has been one of, if not the most boring members of the House of Representatives, voting in line with Republicans every single time that they ask him to, except he has one major break where he did vote to set up an investigatory committee for January 6th. Other than that, he's done nothing for anybody except for the Republican Party. But about 2 weeks ago, February the 18th, a major news story is released where it turns out that he had an affair with a staffer. He was asking her to send him sexy pics of herself. He was asking her if he could have anal sex with her, and she was saying yes. She was cheating on her husband. He was cheating on his wife. They were hanging out at a cabin that she owned in Uvalde, Texas. And she ends up setting herself on fire when this story comes out in her front yard. An absolutely insane story that there's no real way to make light about. I mean, it's just really sad when you think about it at the end of the day. I mean, it's just abusing
You
his.
may be thinking, where do we go from there? And it's gonna be Gonzalez making a statement on a radio show the other day saying, "I made a mistake and had a lapse of judgment, and there was a lack of faith, and I take full responsibility for those actions." Despite him spending weeks saying, "No, that never happened. I don't have any kind of connections to that," and it's just not a coincidence that the day after they have the actual primaries. Oh, by the way, I guess I've got to say it now. Now that the votes are in.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
said, since then, I've reconciled with my wife, Angel. I've asked God to forgive me, which he has, and my faith is as strong as ever.
Well, I mean,
So
that's a big claim to make. How
God can forgive him. I hope that the voters over there in the 23rd district can a little bit.
I
At
mean,
least 41% of them kind of forgave him when they thought it was going on.
who is Tony Gonzalez to say that God forgave him? I mean, what kind of line do you have with God after a staffer fucking burns themselves to death in their front yard because you were cheating on your wife with them, cheating on their that shit just pisses me off so bad. God forgave me. You don't know the first fucking thing about what God did,
Oh, yeah.
Tony Gonzalez. But with that being said, today he was voted 6-0 in the House Ethics Committee to resign from this race. He's still not going to do it, I don't believe. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, or not Kevin McCarthy, what am I talking about? Mike Johnson. Kevin McCarthy, that's a throwback right there. That's an old.
I was about to say, oh, that was a little bit further back.
Yeah, I went back in time there for a second. Mike Johnson said, Tony Gonzalez, please, please don't run for reelection. But I'm going to be honest with you. The money is behind Tony Gonzalez in this election because Brandon Herrera might be the dumbest person ever to run for the House of Representatives. And that is a bold claim to make. There have been some useless motherfuckers that have ran for the House of Representatives. And Brandon Herrera is the peak, just dumbest of them all. This is a dude who has played Nazi music in his YouTube videos and liked the comments that are like, hell yeah, dude, I like that Nazi song you played. And then when he's pressed on, he's like, guys, I'm not a Nazi. I've never been a Nazi. I just, hang out with them sometimes. Just the absolute, just dumbest, most online, stupidest candidate you could think of is Brandon Herrera. We've been calling this one the Chud Off camera. And that's really
Yep.
what it is. These are just the worst people you could think of running against each other head to head. I don't know who to go for in this one.
He aligns himself with Matt Gaetz, if that makes you feel any better, Ayden.
Which one? I think they both might. Brandon Herrera is a Matt Gaetz guy.
Yeah, he loves Matt
Yeah,
Gaetz.
I'm sure Tony Gonzalez loves Matt Gaetz too. He just doesn't have the nuts to say it on air. I mean, just two of the absolute worst people you'll ever hear about running head to head in this Texas district. I don't know what to make of this. Brandon, do you have any idea who's going to win this one in the runoff?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it might wind up being Herrera in this one. Now that Mr. Gonzalez has already came out and just straight up like said, "Hey, I lied to y'all earlier." It's coming out and saying, "Hey, I lied. I messed up." Never a good thing with politics. Never a good thing for a politician to have to come out and do. I think that's going to wind up and his ultimate downfall here. And unfortunately, for the 23rd district of Texas, it's going to be Herrera representing them in the U.S. House of Representatives.
I mean, I think that the main thing that makes a difference to me was the 17-point win that Herrera had in Uvalde County in this initial section of the election. Uvalde County is the second major urban point of this election behind San Antonio, well, Behar County, the suburbs of San Antonio, where Gonzalez won by 0.4%. I think the major difference in votes is going to come down to Uvalde, which is unfortunately where Tony Gonzalez's dead affair partner hails from. So he's got a lot of groveling, a lot of apologizing. I just don't know where the next 12 weeks, next 3 months of runoff goes for Tony Gonzalez. I don't know what he could really do to make amends in this election. Like Herrera kind of just lucked into being the guy who's running against him, even though I mean he almost beat him in the last one, to be honest. Like he's been a decent candidate where he just is like, I love guns and liberty. And that's a strong thing in West Texas, I reckon.
They just care about guns over there in Texas, man. That's the big thing.
Dude, there's
Guns
nothing.
and immigration, I feel like, are the two things that, if you lean right on in Texas, that's going to get you elected. I'm going to be honest with you.
I mean, not lean right on. You got to be the furthest right possible. You got to be the. I would say that Brandon Herrera is. I wouldn't be entirely opposed to calling Brandon Herrera a Nazi, and people are gonna, everybody's like, oh, dude, they're not Nazis. Brandon Herrera is a Nazi. Tony
No.
Gonzalez is probably not a Nazi, probably just a dumb Republican at the end of the day, which is
That's what I was gonna say. These are two very just morally bankrupt guys for two very different reasons.
yeah,
Tony
just
Gonzalez goes out, has an affair, leads to the whole situation that we were just talking about with the staffer, and then
yeah,
you have on the other side of this Brendan Herrera, who's just, I'm gonna choose my guns over really any kind of person as long as I get to have my guns. Everybody in this country can die.
yeah. Like if school shooters are like, yeah, I see this guy's an inspiration. It's like, oh man, I don't really care because I want my guns at the end of the day. That's really what it is. And Tony Gonzalez, who is, I don't really care about anyone. I'm just here to. I don't really know what Tony Gonzalez's end goal is at the end of the day. I just think there are people who want to have authority, want to be in positions of power. And Tony Gonzalez is the end all be all of a person who has no moral conviction, who has no anything beyond I will do anything to stay in power in the Republican Party. Right now I mean he is a Hispanic person, but right now we're hating Hispanic people and loving guns in my district, and that's what I'm gonna say that I do. And I think he's kind of cooked himself here, to be honest with you. And now going to a kind of an opposite version of a chud off. I don't know, a lib off, if you will. These two people are just living out against each other. You got in the Texas 33rd district, Julie Johnson versus Colin Allred. And this is an election that I lost some money off of in Kalshi. I did have Julie Johnson coming out in this one in the primary. She ends up losing 44% to 33.2%, a 10.8% loss. I do think she has some room to grow in the primary here, but Colin Allred, I mean, a popular candidate in the state of Texas. I know Brandon, you've got some a lot of takes on Colin Allred. What do you think about this young man?
He was a former linebacker over there for the Tennessee Titans before he got into politics over there, and he proposed a ban on congressional stock trading. That's the thing that really took center stage into this one in the race. and Allred's campaign hitting Johnson for actively trading stocks during her time in Congress. Which I mean, me personally, that's a big thing for me. Is I've always been a very big anti stock trading person when it comes to politicians. I've always been against it, and now knowing, looking into it, that Julie Johnson was responsible for those. That's, I don't want to call it a deal breaker for me, but the more I read on about Colin Allred, the more I'm kind of like, okay, I think I can get behind this guy.
Mm-hmm. Allred, I wouldn't even say the main issue in this campaign was his position on stock trading. I would say his main thing in this campaign was his involvement in the Senate race between Tallarico and Crockett, where there was a bit of a scandal where an influencer alleged that Tallarico had told them that Allred was a mediocre black man running for Congress, and that's why he had jumped into the Senate race. And Tallarico kind of rebuttals it, saying, I said that his campaign he ran against Ted Cruz, where he lost by, where he overran Kamala Harris by 5.5 points, was mediocre, not the man himself. And I'll be honest with you, I think Allred kind of is a mediocre campaigner. I don't see any real political positions from Allred beyond I'm a moderate Democrat, guys. Give it to me. He voted to close some loopholes in gun purchasing after the Uvalde shooting. He really gained himself like a good Washington D.C. beltline following. I'm gonna, do what is good for this Democratic Party. He was a rising star, but then he lost to Ted Cruz pretty convincingly. But he outran Kamala by 5.5. I don't really know. I think a corpse could have outran Kamala by 5.5 points, to be entirely honest with you. I think Kamala ran one of the worst campaigns that we've ever seen from a Democrat, and that's including Michael Dukakis
Oh yeah,
in 1988 and freaking who's the dude from Minnesota? I don't know why I can't remember his name right now. I've had a few too many Evan Williams bottled in bonds to remember whoever the Minnesota. He was from Minnesota in 1984, ran against Reagan, got killed everywhere else, and uh, Allred we saw being endorsed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I think that really shows his Hitlerite tendencies, where he's okay with being all right with the Hitler third of Americans. Where I think of third of Americans is cool with being Nazis as long as they make profits on their small businesses and they can take advantage of the workers who make their profits for them. They say that's cool, that's awesome. We love doing this. He was one of the only Democrats to be endorsed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. That's the shit that gets me pissed off. I hate the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. There's nothing worse than the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Stop exploiting the workers who are really out there doing the hard work for you so you can make the profits. And now look into Julie Johnson, his opponent in this 33rd district in Dallas County that we've tried to talk around, not really talked about. I'm checking her Wikipedia page. I'm checking her issues page. You were saying?
what do you think the thing that these two candidates need to kind of like focus on in the runoff?
That's a tough question because I don't think either of them are really focused on much of anything. I think, Julie Johnson, I look at her thing. She's, she has a reputation in the circles that I run in, at least, as the more progressive of the two candidates. You go and look at her issues page. You go and look at her Wikipedia where they got the positions usually. It's just awful. I mean, there's nothing except for on her Wikipedia page. The only thing she has information on is she's a lesbian. She's
Yeah,
gay.
I was gonna ask you. Do you think that played a part in her like trying to? Oh, okay. Did she play a? Did she kind of lean into that, saying vote for me. I'm a lesbian. She became the first openly lesbian senator in the South.
Yeah, member of Congress, and there is like I think there is an identity politics to Dallas County, which we kind of saw in the Senate race as well, where Crockett outran Tallarico despite not really, I think, having the more defined policies and more just running based on identity. But with Julie Johnson and Colin Allred, I don't know if either of them really have any policy beyond Colin Allred's policy is, guys, I'm biracial. I ran a 4.85 at the combine, I played in the NFL, put up 17 bench press reps, had a great 20-yard shuttle, 4.37, have some great closing speed and open space, 46 tackles in 32 games for the Tennessee Titans. I don't know if Allred has really a policy argument beyond that point. He's like, I play in the NFL and I'm, moderate. I can win the Republican voters on to things where I need to. And I don't think Julie Johnson has an argument beyond, guys, I vote with the Democrats and I'm a lesbian. It's just very woke 1.0. I feel like we're kind of in woke
I
2.
was gonna ask. I was gonna ask if you think that it's kind of like a identity politics off, where it seems like both of these people are just very big into the oh, I'm more of a victim than this person is type of thing that we see within the Democratic Party a whole lot.
Yeah, I think Johnson is less into that just because I don't know. I didn't know she was a lesbian until I literally clicked on her Wikipedia page today, and I'm, as I've said, the most politically informed person in America. So if I don't know it, who does? And um, I just think they're very woke 1.0 candidates, whereas today we're kind of in the Zoran era of politics, I would call it, for the Democratic Party, where it is more policy and just if you can have a coherent message is the number one thing. And I don't know if either of these people can put together a coherent message. Now, from the circles that I have heard, I've just heard that Julie Johnson is the more progressive candidate, but I don't know if I've heard any reasoning for that beyond she just is and Allred burned a lot of bridges in Texas with his like Senate campaign in 24 and his fake Senate campaign in 26. And then his video that he made where he was like calling James Tallarico racist weirdly in this election and endorsing Crockett. That probably does hurt him in a Democratic primary. Now that Tallarico does end up as the Democratic Senate nominee, I think Johnson has room to grow from the Carlos Quintanilla, who ended up third in this, and Zishan Hafiz, who was fourth in this race. I think she does end up eating a plurality, if not a majority, outright majority of those voters. Well, it has to be an outright majority because they're not getting pluralities in a two-person election. And
Yeah,
and I think she does end up eating the majority of those elections, but she's going to have to make up 17 points when Allred just has to eat 16 points of large votes in this election. And I don't know if Johnson can make that up in the Dallas electorate, especially after what happened on election night in Dallas. I'm sure you heard about it with the closing of the polls early, or not closing of the polls early, with the you have to vote at the exact right precinct. It's not a countywide election. You have to vote at the proper precinct. They expand the times that the polls are open from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. because people can't get the right precinct. They're just going to the nearest person in the county, not the right precinct where they're exactly registered. And it was just a whole mess in Dallas County. Allred ends up winning 44% of the votes, even despite what people called a lot of racial discrimination at the polls. I'm not sure how prevalent that ends up being at this point in time in Dallas County. but I'm sure it had an effect, even if it is somewhat. And Julie Johnson is going to have to make up some ground, is going to have to make up some concessions to what the Democratic primary voters want to hear there. But I'm not really sure the Democratic primary voters in Dallas County are tuned into anything beyond who the black candidate is in the election. I think that might be their biggest issue is, we're going to vote for the black person. And you know what? Hey, you want to feel represented? Go for it. I'm not a hater. I don't blame them. Years of years of suppression will do that to you. We'll talk a little bit about that with we get into Iran later on in this episode, but I don't blame voters in Dallas County for having a bit of that Iranian mentality. We're going to vote for the people who are going to defend us no matter what.
All right. And then moving from, it seems like we've talked about Texas a whole lot in this episode. We're going to move over to North Carolina. We're in the 4th Congressional District. It was Anita Alam and Valerie Fauci, the incumbent, been serving on that House of Representatives chair since 2022. It was Fauci winning 42 or 49.2% of the votes in that one, compared to 48.2 for Anita. So, Ayden, what do you think was the issue that really got voters out and excited for Alam to get that 48% of the vote?
Well, I think the thing that really motivated the voters was the APAC and just the general Democratic Sam Bankman Fried she had received millions of dollars from in the past as well. Just like massive PAC political action committee spending on the behalf of Fauci, I think really activated progressive voters in the 4th district against her. I think Alam really she really I wish she would have ran it up more, to be honest with you. I'd put this was another Cauchy bet that I had placed for Alam. I believe that she's going to win this one easy with that Durham support, with the Chapel Hill support, Duke, North Carolina. I was like, they're going to come together finally in support of Nita Alam. This is going to be the thing that can bring the two campuses together. And it was not quite that, to be honest with you. But I thought that Alam was the gap to be bridged between the two, with the past support that Fauci had received from APAC and from cryptocurrencies, from data centers. I thought that Alam really had a good shot with the Bernie Sanders endorsement. But Fauci really in this campaign was able to consolidate a progressive, not consolidate, but like make a case for being a progressive, where she joined the House Progressive Committee, where she came out in support of Medicare for all, when she came out in support of no longer selling offensive arms to Israel. I think were major points in this campaign where Fauci was able to cut in to a lot of the gains that Alam would have made if she were not to make the same claims that Alam had made throughout both the 2022 election when she challenged her, and then again now in 2026.
And then, so how much pressure do you think that Fauci was under leading up to the election right here?
I mean, it was pretty major stuff, to be honest with you. I mean, she had really, I think if she doesn't take the more progressive lane in this one, she's kind of cooked with how this district is made up, with the both the Chapel Hill and the Durham vote made up, and as well as the Raleigh, the North Carolina state kind of vote that eats into this, the suburbs of Raleigh. It is a lot of that tri area that you hear about. But Fauci was able to win Chapel Hill part of the district by 7%. And that's really what won this race by, 1,200 votes. The she won Chapel Hill by 2,300, if she doesn't come out in support of cutting arms funding to Israel in in terms of getting that Medicare for all policy on her sheet, I really don't think she has a chance in winning Orange County, the Chapel Hill section of this district. Alam was the Bernie Sanders endorsed candidate, but she could not make it work throughout the district. She really needed to bring in more support in that Orange County district, and she was not able to consolidate it for whatever reason.
And now after this, where do you think Alam kind of like goes from here? Do you see her trying to make another run at the House here in 2 years in 2028?
You lose twice, and it's kind of a difficult spot to be in. With that being said, Fauci will be 71 years old in 2028, and Alam will still be under 35 years of age at that point. So I think it might be kind of a peaceful passing of the torch from Fauci to Alam if another candidate does not emerge in that time. Alam initially said she was going to challenge the results of this election with a recount, has since kind of conceded the election to Fauci, and probably going to end up throwing her support behind her in the primary. Fauci's going to win whether or not Alam throws her support in her. It's a 65-70% Democratic makeup of the electorate, with both the Chapel Hill and Durham in the district, the most Democratic precinct district in the state of North Carolina. I do think Alam had more conviction behind those progressive ideals. She released a statement in this election where she said that it shouldn't take a primary to get a candidate to come out and support the progressive ideals that she did in this election. And I largely agree with that. I mean, I think Fauci is kind of lying to the people of the North Carolina 4th District, but hey, man, who am I to make a claim about what's happening over there? Except for everybody, I'm the most politically informed man in America. But Fauci ended up making enough concessions to barely pull this one out by less than a percentage point. Good for her. Good for her, man. She hopefully she votes with the way that she said she will in this one. If she doesn't, I think she'll probably end up getting cooked in 28 by Alam. But if she's able to, you know, make those concessions, maybe she gets another term. Maybe she passes the torch in 2030 when she'll be 73 years of age. She ain't got much longer. Alam is a 40 years younger than her, so Alam is probably the long term answer to what this district will be, but Fauci will hold it for now. And Fauci's kind of a cool candidate, low key. Fauci lied, millions died, but Fauci is kind of a cool candidate where she was a secretary of a police department for like 40 years and then just got involved in politics. It was just kind of a mainstream
Oh,
Democrat, but loser bullshit. But at the end of the day, this is a cool story. I'm not a hater. I'm not a hater, except for when I am, which is most of the time.
and now look, we've talked a whole lot about the Senate races going on in Texas and about some of the House races that are going on domestically. But I want to end the episode today by talking about some of the foreign policy things that we have going on, specifically about everything that's going on in Iran. According to the New York Times, we now have 6 American deaths into the conflict over there, and according to Reuters, it's 1,230 deaths for Iran. And then I think that's kind of taking the center stage, but still behind the scenes in this is Lebanon, where there's been 77 people that's died by an Iranian strike, and Reuters again with 10 dead civilians, but no military casualties over for Israel. But Ayden, I want to ask you just kind of like, what is the biggest misconception of the whole conflict that's going on?
The biggest misconception that I would say is happening in this or not in this election, in this conflict, would be that just Iran wants this. Iran is, like positioning for a war with America, where I think they are in active conflict and active disagreement with America, but I don't think that they actively want their people to die in a war with them. I think that they are in conflict with them because of what we have done to the people of Iran for, going on 70 years now, going on 75 years now. It really starts back in 53 where we doing a regime change to get the Shah in charge over Prime Minister Mossadegh, who is trying to nationalize the oil industry in Iran in 1953. And then that ends up leading to the Iranian Revolution in 79, where, you'll hear a lot of people cite Lindsey Graham, who has been like the main proponent of pushing this in Congress. I would say is Lindsey Graham. Tim Burchett from Tennessee had a great quote today where he said Lindsey Graham hasn't heard of a fist fight that he wants to turn into a bombing, which I think is a tremendous quote on the politics of Lindsey Graham. um, kind of agree with what his opinions are on the Middle East, where these are nations that we have meddled in for the last 70 years, the last, the major part of the last century. And we are surprised when they harbor negative feelings or negative connotations towards us and our involvement in their politics. We go out and we kill a leader for, the umpteenth time, it feels like, in Iran. And are we going to replace him with someone who is going to do great stuff in Iran? Is going to make the nation safer and more, you know, like, are we going to have someone who's going to guarantee more human rights to the Iranian people? Probably not. We're going to have people who's going to be more cozy and more safe with the American way of doing things in Iran. And that is the be all end all of it. That's what we really are about. And whether it's the Republican side or the Democrat side, I don't feel like there is a real opposition to what America is trying to do in Iran. You look at what Pete Hegseth has to say about the Iranian war. This is a direct quote here. He says, "The dumb, politically correct wars of the past were the opposite of what we're doing here. They had vague objections with restrictive, minimalist rules of engagement. No more." And I don't know if you can get more vague in the objections than what we are doing in Iran right now. We do not have any further objections other than they are Muslim and they don't like America. But saying that they don't like America is ignoring a century of domestic policy in which we've bombed the shit out of them, in which we've killed every foreign leader. If I was Iranian, I'm not sure that I would say death to America myself. Like, if you kill every leader that a country has for the greater part of a century, why would you expect them to be a fan of you? I don't understand where the cognitive dissonance is coming from. We're going to go in and we're going to kill your leaders. We're going to overthrow every government that you set up democratically for the better part of a century because they don't like us, and we're going to continue to do it. And if we keep doing it, that's going to make you like us. I don't think that that's a way of acting in foreign policy that makes any sense whatsoever. And I just the things that we're doing is I have a objection to them in many ways.
So now, do you think that if we put someone that we can like place as the leader of Iran over there, do you think that that would help the kind of like Iranian people look at us in a little bit better light for it?
No, because we've done it 18 times. I feel like by this point, if I mean that's a little bit of an exaggeration on the number, we've done it numerous times, and every single time it just makes it worse and worse because we're not inserting someone based on their moral positions or on what they really believe. We're inserting a leader based on what their connection to America is, and if they are going to continue the foreign interest that we feel in America will benefit us, even if they are completely against what the Iranian people need and what the Iranian people want. And you mentioned Lebanon. That it's another case of we are acting in the interest of what Israel wants in the Middle East. We are acting in the case of benefiting Israel, and by benefiting Israel, benefiting ourselves by building our control over the Middle East. We're going to kill as many Iranians as possible. We're going to kill as many Lebanese people as possible. Israel and Lebanon have a ceasefire right now. What's the number of Lebanon people in Lebanon that have been killed? You said
77.
77 people in Lebanon killed through an Israeli ceasefire that is currently like still enacted, but it's not being respected whatsoever because they don't really care about it. Like they don't care if they kill Lebanese people because we're going to support them no matter what international law they break, no matter how many innocent civilians they killed. We killed 175 children in a school. A U.S. strike on an Iranian school. We murdered them and we don't care about it. We say that, oh, we can't do politically correct war. We're going to enact whatever awful, murderous, against the laws of engage. Like, I hate to live out. I hate to be like, oh, the UN's fucking based and we got to follow what the UN says the rules of engagement are. Because the UN's fucking bullshit too, dude. Nobody listens to the UN. But at the end of the day, there does have to be some standard of what we are doing. And there has to be, like, in the 2028 election for the Democratic primary, you to get my vote, at least, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, even though I really want to. I love speaking for everybody. I love making broad claims. You really have to make a claim against what the Republican Party is doing, against what Pete Hegseth is doing, against what Donald Trump is doing. You have to send them to federal prison. You have to give them actual massive penalties for the things like Hegseth saying that there is no more rules of engagement. You have to give him the electric chair for what he has said. If you were going to be a real Democratic candidate who's like, we're going to follow international law and we're going to be about liberal, neoliberal laws of what, you should do. If you're going to follow the international laws of what should happen in a conflict, you have to be campaigning on massive penalties for members of the Trump administration who have broken those laws blatantly and bragged about it, to be honest with you.
Yep. I do think that we kind of get lost in this. I do think Trump should absolutely be sent to prison, and it's because of all the crimes that he has committed, and I think the damage that he's done to America just as a whole. And that's not me just being like, oh, that's just because he's Republican. It's
You're
just
living
no,
out,
it's
man.
because Donald
Living
Trump is a
out right
bad
now.
person. Donald Trump is a criminal that needs to go. Donald Trump is a criminal that needs to go and be put in jail for the things that he's done while he's been in office. I don't think it has anything to do with oh he's a Republican or oh he's a Democrat or anything like that. I think that Donald Trump, when we look back at the Trump presidencies, both times that we've had it, we're going to see a guy who was responsible for very divisive policies and politics. We're going to see a guy who kind of birthed this. I don't know what I'm running for. It's just against whatever they're running for. And I think that it gets misconstrued as me saying, I mean, like, oh, you hate Republicans. And it's not just a Republican thing. It's literally this man went out and he's been one of the most immoral people that I've seen in my entire life. And it's just kind of like people are still supporting him simply because they don't want to put politics aside on things.
Yeah, to build on what you are saying currently, it's not just Donald Trump. I got a quote from Chuck Schumer right here. He says, "When I talked to Secretary Rubio, I implored him to be straight with Congress and the American people about the objectives of these strikes and what comes next. Iran must never be allowed to attain a nuclear weapon. But the American people do not want another endless and costly war in the Middle East when there are so many problems at home. The administration has not provided Congress and the American people with critical details about the scope and immediacy of the threat, confronting Iran's malign regional activities, nuclear ambitions, and harsh suppression of the Iranian people demands American strength, resolve, regional coordination, and strategic clarity. Unfortunately, President Trump's fitful cycles of lashing out and risking wider conflict are not a viable strategy. And this hits at what you're saying, where it's not just the Republicans that are the issue. Chuck Schumer in this statement is saying, I'm not against beating the shit out of Iran, against bombing every single civilian in every single Iranian civilian. I'm against not telling Congress about it. I'm against the way that Donald Trump is doing it. He doesn't have any real. This is the Senate minority leader for the Democratic Party. He doesn't have any real objection to what is happening in Iran. He has the problem with how Donald Trump is conducting it. He wouldn't conduct it any differently. He just wants him to say, "Oh, be honest with us about how you're doing it." He doesn't have any real differing opinions, any real ideas on how to do it differently. He just is like, I'm opposed to how Trump is doing it, but I support bombing the fuck out of Iran and killing civilians and killing people in Lebanon and killing endless. He's for the war in Palestine. He's for killing numerous millions of civilians. He just wants to oppose how Donald Trump does it. And I don't buy it coming from Schumer. I think he's just as guilty in this as the Republican Party is.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think if Chuck Schumer was the president, we'd still be going and throwing strikes at Iran right now. To be honest with you.
If Chuck Schumer was the president, is one of the funnier sentences I've ever heard. Have you ever heard about him? I don't know if you ever heard about this. This is him talking about the Baileys. This is his moderate idea of what Americans are that he's invented. He's run his whole life based on the Baileys, which are this couple that he is entirely invented in his mind. They're not a real couple from Long Island, New York, that are like lifelong Republicans that are anti Donald Trump voters that like believe in the rule of law, but like kind of agree with Donald Trump on everything, where they're like Trump 2016 voters, Trump or Biden 2020 voters, Trump 2024 voters. And this is what Schumer has run his life off of for the last decade. And I just don't understand why you wouldn't just take a principled approach. You would say, this is what I believe is right. This is what I believe is wrong. And not inventing some bullshit that you can be like, these are the people that I'm trying to impress. The Baileys, this couple from Long Island that isn't real, that I'm going to write books about why they believe what they believe. That's what American politics are today, and not what I believe. That's why we have a fucking Republican democracy, is so people who believe things that may not be the entire belief of the people, they might not be democratically supported by the majority of people in America. They are supported by the people in Congress who are more informed, more intelligent on the issues. That's their job, but they fucking just support Israel instead of the things that are actually going to help American people. They're just like, we're going to give endless support to Israel. We're going to give endless support to bombing Iran. And we're not going to give any support at all whatsoever to the policies that could have some positive impact on the American people at large.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions I have for you here is, who do you think is the most at fault in what is currently going on in Iran right now? And can it be resolved, and how?
I just took a strong shot of bourbon right there. And I'm going to say the most at fault people in the war in Iran is shared between the British and the American people who initially interfered in the 1953 conflict to nationalize the oil industry as Mossadegh wanted to do. He had 99% approval to do so, and we decided that it was not of British or American interest, of Western, we'll say, as the broad term for both of us, interest to do so. And since that point, we've really continued that viewpoint on things where we do not support anything that the Iranian people do in support of themselves. We're going to support purely and entirely our interest in the Middle East, and anything that the Iranians do to try to build back a a a viewpoint where they are the middle of themselves. We talk so much about America first, putting America first in America. I mean, I feel like that's a major political viewpoint these days. But we are supportive of bombing the shit out of Iran. Like 76% of Republicans approve this. It's 37% of Americans overall. And I don't know how any single American could approve bombing Iran when all they are trying to do, like, we have regime change after regime change after regime change put in the most authoritarian, the most human rights denying, the most evil motherfuckers you can think of to try to run the nation of Iran in support of our own interests in the country. And then we're like, why would they have a plurality of Shia Muslims who are in favor of um, putting Islamic religious leaders in charge when it's our fault that we have pushed them in this direction to of extremism and worrying about themselves. And like in 1979, in the 1970s, Iran was not what it is today, where we make it out to be this evil, brutal nation that we have built on the back of our, like, just interventionism. It's our fault, and not. I don't blame the people of Iran for saying death to America whatsoever.
So now, how much of the gas kind of like on this fire? Well, do you think gas got thrown on this kind of issue after 9/11 and just kind of, I'm gonna be honest with you, people just being fucking stupid about just the Middle East as a whole and not knowing really countries and where people were.
I mean, the war in Iraq, I feel like, has more of a devastating, a negative effect on the war in Iran today than it does a positive effect. And I mean, you see that with our GOAT, Nick Fuentes, our number one guy, who's being like, I will vote for a Democrat before I vote for freaking war in Iran. Hell yeah, Nick, keep fighting the good fight, man. Um, sorry, let me reset after that. Let me not support Nick Fuentes fully. But
Not fully, not fully.
yeah, not
Yeah,
fully.
some
Only, dude, I'm only a little bit of a Nick Fuentes supporter. I only like the little bit of the stuff that he says. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan. I'm just a little bit of a Nick Fuentes fan, dude. Trust. Um, the things that are happening in Iran today are products of our own meddling. They are entirely based on the things that we have done there. I don't think that they are based in anything other than anti-Western sentiment. That's the feeling in Iran, and it's reciprocated in America, where they feel anti-Western, we feel anti-Iran. Like, we hate America, we hate you back. And it's going to take a little bit of an administration or a period of time where we say, okay, we're going to try to make a difference in Iran, where we're not going to be solely based in trying to affect you negatively, and we're going to try to help your people out a little bit to promote prosperity everywhere, but that's not going to happen under a conservative regime. I don't really think it's going to happen under a democratic regime either. It's going to take some anti-imperialist viewpoint that only comes from people that self-identify as socialists, such as an AOC or a Bernie Sanders or whatever. They're going to be like, okay, guys, we've really fucked what's happening in the Middle East. We've got to go in with some ideas to fix it. And I think that, that viewpoint is in a vast minority, not just Congress, but in America, which you kind of see with how few Americans support not bombing Iran. It is a thing where you see like an opinion where you're like, I don't want to support what the administration is doing. A lot of people are just opposed to whatever Donald Trump does, no matter what it is. But that is a lesser viewpoint, I think.
See, I do think that one of the big things that we've messed up in all these regime changes in Iran is we've always put someone in there that they have America's best interest in Iran, where we're not listening to Iranian people, we're not listening to the thoughts that they have, we're not listening to anybody that's over there that's going to be directly affected by it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is really where the regime change comes from. Its heart, I feel like, is advancing American interest in Iran. Like we don't really care what Iranian best interests are. We want to advance what we believe will help us, will help the UK, will help the West at large. And that is the number one priority. And number two is maybe mitigating the damage that any extremist will do to us. Now that is, I mean, we're going to, you've seen us like with the war on terrorism, where we will maybe take a hammer to and shatter radical Islamist uh, outpost, but we'll just kind of spread them out among a larger venue of things. They're less concentrated, but they're more spread out among larger territories in lower rates. And we allow a group to really rise up among Americans where they or among Middle Eastern people, among Shia or maybe even Sunni Muslims who are converted to Shia Muslim because they believe that the Sunni Muslim way of believing is not advancing their own interests enough, is leading to them being put second. That is what leads to religious extremism, is us continuously advancing our own interest over the people in the Middle East. And the things that we have done in the Middle East, I think, have just led to more polarization in that section of the country that maybe will eventually lead to more brutal terrorist attacks on the country of America, on Western nations in general, if we do not put some level of thought, of some interest into what Middle Eastern nations need overall.
Sorry, yeah, again, I think it's just kind of like us going over there and just saying we're not doing what's best for Iran. We're just going to do what's best for the Western world, and almost I don't want to call it imperialism
It
because we're
is,
not going to go in there. We're not going to take over it.
I
Oh, it
mean,
is imperialism.
it is imperialism on like not we're going and taking over them, but on we want to control what they do with their resources, on what they do politically, on what they do, with their resources, and even beyond oil, on their rare earth minerals or whatever else they have in their country with their individual people that are there. We try to continue to build our own interest over the people of Iran. And that's what leads to this religious extremism that we see and continues to grow and grow and grow from where it has been 50 years ago. Like you look at where it is now, and it is bigger than it has been at any point in history because of the things that we have continued to do in their nations and in their territories. And I think that that largely reflects on us and what our foreign policy has been more than what on the Iranian government is teaching their people, because we have been more influential there than even the Ayatollah or supreme leader that we install has been.
Absolutely. I do think that we've messed up in Iran, we've messed up in the Middle East, and that's been happening, at least to my knowledge, since 2001. And I think that there's a whole lot of stuff I think that we've messed up in a whole lot of stuff that's going on over there simply because it's like we want control over it and we're about to just take over it, as I said, imperialism. And then we just kind of take the step back after that. Like, I
Yeah,
think that it's either kind of like have to be one way on it. You can't just take and put your foot in the door of it and then go and run away from it. It's either you got to go full fledged into it or just not interfere in it at all.
yeah, a lot of foreign policy scholars are going to look at 9/11 and say that that is the logical means to the end of what we had done in the Middle East for the better part of a decade at that point. Since World War II, we had really endlessly meddled in what was going on in Middle Eastern states. And I don't want to say, well, it's a very controversial thing to say that America deserved 9/11, that America earned it with their 50 plus years of foreign policy. But if you look at what we had done in Iran, at what we had done in Iraq, and what we had done through funding Israel to take over Palestine and the apartheid state that we had kind of supported, there is real no theory of Middle Eastern politics beyond blowback, in that the fact that 9/11 was the logical conclusion to what 50 years of foreign policy from the United States was in the Middle East and from the Western states at large, really was.
Yeah, yeah, I really do think that what so I do want to end it just by asking you a question and thinking, would there ever be an instance where you would think that the president could go through and carry out a strike like that and it be you it have your approval of it?
Have my approval of it? Probably not, because I'm just such an
Yeah.
anti interventionist that I am
Yeah.
going to oppose, any response to whatever, because of what we have done in terms of like imperialist action in the Middle East for the better part of a century, as I've said many times throughout this. There are, of course, I mean, like if we were to be attacked, I would like say it's time to probably work out a solution between it so it doesn't happen again. To be honest with you, because I think that the amount of meddling that we have done in the Middle East at this point, the only answer is to be, answered with military action in the way that we have given them military action for decade on decade on decade. And I mean, with that, we will go ahead and wrap this episode up. We have hit every single topic we have wanted to hit, from Iran, the Middle East, to what's going on in West Texas, to what's going on at the broader Senate elections at large. This has been a tremendous episode of Under Further Review. We hope to see you again next week. It has been beautiful.